about it then. So now, please welcome to the stage, Chris Wilson.
Well, I get you to clap twice for me, so that's great. Welcome. So I'm Chris Wilson, along with Jeffrey Yaskin. I'm Web Standards Tech Lead for Chrome at Google, and I'm here to talk about some of the work we've been doing to improve standards discourse and ask for some help as well. So for some background, I've been working in open web platform and standards work for pretty much my entire career, over a quarter century since 1993. And in that time, I've worked with a whole lot of different people who are used to kind of typical product and platform, like proprietary platform development. And standards are different, in short. Like working in open standards environments is different. Standards discussions bring together a lot of people from across different companies, different industries. Sometimes they have radically different goals in the same space. And you'll also get radically different levels of experience in participants. New people join standards work all the time. I mean, obviously, if I personally was only welcoming with people who had been working on web standards as long as I have, I would be in a very small room. This can be really challenging because sometimes newcomers lack context, and we need to understand that it's actually critically important to be welcoming to them, to provide that new perspective. And we have to provide that context while we remain open to those new perspectives. So if you're developing a proprietary platform, usually this kind of sorts itself out because your team's hierarchically structured based on experience or authority, and that's not true with open standards. A lot of times different participants come from various vendors. They have different levels of skin in the game, different levels of experience. And we know that sometimes those conversations can get a little heated. And we wanted to work on how to improve that, improve the level of discourse, kind of set some ground rules. So well over a year ago, Chris Harrelson and I started working on an effort to define kind of an aspirational ideal of having safe, inclusive, and productive conversations. We believe that truly open standards discussions really require venues that welcome and respect various perspectives. At the same time, we need to focus those conversations and make sure that we're actually being constructive and productive, that we try to achieve constructive goals, not just sit around being polite. So there are some challenges, and that is a balance. Now, every standards venue that I know about, and I know of a lot, has a code of conduct. They have some kind of baseline. Most of them say very similar things. Unfortunately, not all of those are really, I don't want to say enforced. Not all of them really have their spirit integrated into their organization. And sometimes people have issues, they get reported, nothing happens. That just makes it worse. And of course, sometimes groups just sort of get used to doing things the same way, and they keep doing the same thing time after time. So Chris and I drafted some guidance on this. We've been working together with a number of other major vendors to get some agreement, some kind of engagement on shared views. And we have an open effort that we generally refer to as the standards of behavior to work towards an ideal. We encourage you to read this doc. Feel free to comment on it. It's in GitHub. It's got open issues and everything else. Add your support, whatever. I'm giving you the core of it right now, so you don't need to go read it to understand what it's all about. And I do want to be really clear. The whole point of this is not to replace codes of conduct. This is actually to support them, to build on them, to give them not really some teeth, but some structure underneath them so that we can work together on them. Mostly we wanted to find sort of golden rules for standards discourse and then support our team in those golden rules. And in short, those rules are be respectful. This doesn't mean you have to agree, just means you have to really try to see things from other people's points of view, not just get your point across, and try to get to the root of the issue, like the underlying principles. In fact, secondly, the most important rule probably to me is don't assume that you understand the other person. Like I find it personally, a lot of times if I assume that I know people's motivations, I'm frequently wrong. If I actually ask them, if I say, hey, I think you are saying this, And I think that's because you think this is really important as an underlying principle. I could be wrong, but I'll correct it then, and we can work together a lot more easily. And then finally, we really believe that it's very important to focus on constructive action, and more than anything else, directing people toward constructive action. Merely adding stop energy to conversations, not okay, no matter who is doing it. Telling someone their position is ignorant is pretty useless. Telling them, hey, you could go learn this, or suggesting some areas of investigation, telling them what your concerns are very directly, telling them what data you'd need to see to decide one way or another, or even just going back and working on underlying principles and making sure you can agree on underlying principles first are really great things to do. So pragmatically, I wanted to share what this means for people. If you work for Google, for Chrome team members in particular, this is twofold. First and foremost, we expect you to be open, honest, inclusive, welcoming, all that kind of good stuff. We expect you to have exemplary behavior, in short. If you don't, expect you're probably going to be called on it. We'll have a conversation. That's not a reprimand. That's not, we're going to go talk to your manager. It's, we're trying to do things to make things better. But secondly, though, and for Chrome team members, I want to be really clear, this is at least as important. Expect that it means you shouldn't have an abusive environment to work in. If you're having trouble, if standards work is overly frustrating because you're working with people who don't always have the same goals, the same design constraints, the same backgrounds, they certainly don't always have the same ship cycles that you do, you can expect that there's disagreements. But that doesn't mean that it's okay if somebody keeps implying you're an idiot. It doesn't mean it's okay if they're calling you an idiot or worse. It's not. You should ask for help. You should let us know. We're going to help you navigate through that. Again, this isn't the cops are going to show up. This is just helping us build the guidance as well so that we can improve on these issues in the future. So in short, Chromies, we're here to help you, give you support, make sure that you feel like this is an inclusive venue. For those of you who don't work for Google, obviously the flip side of both of those, we expect you to ask us to improve. If any of our team members are failing, let's have a conversation. This doesn't mean you should be tattling on people. It's really asking for help in how to better work with us and how we can make those conversations better. You can approach me and say, hey, I'm having trouble getting Jeffrey to understand my point of view on this thing. I can probably give some insight into that or work together to help resolve it, and vice versa. We will, of course, also do likewise. If we're having trouble communicating with you, if we feel like you're just adding stop energy to a conversation, we will have a conversation about it. We do have a set of people who are going to come in and help. I don't want to give the impression that we are interested in tone policing standards conversations. Like, that's not really the goal. The goal here is if we all work together to recognize and call out anti-productive behavior and anti-inclusive behavior, then we can have a much better community. We can have a lot friendlier time. It can be a lot more fun for all of us and hopefully more productive in the end. Sorry. Thought I had something else to say there, but no. So there are two real asks here. First and foremost, if you have any issues like this, if you're thinking, wow, yeah, it's really been awful in this group that I'm working in or something, this is who to go to. We have an ombuds email alias. This is for internal and external use. You should be able to send mail to this from outside. We have tested it, so hopefully that works. This is currently a small set of Googlers that will respond to this issue, your issues confidentially. This is currently just myself and Jeffrey. We're looking forward to expanding that list. In particular, expanding it to a more diverse set of ombuds. Googlers, if you're interested in helping with this, please let me know, and we can certainly expand that. But if you have issues with this, email the ombuds list, email myself, email Jeffrey, or of course, if you want to help make the guidance better overall, please just jump in and comment on the GitHub issue, or GitHub repo, sorry. With that, these are the most important bits, the repo, the email alias, and myself. And I want to stop and open this up for discussion, open it up for any off-the-cuff guidance you might have, and we can go from there. And if you're remote, please raise your hand. I should be able to see it if this is working properly. If you're in the room, just raise your hand and I can repeat questions so we don't lose anything for the recording or anything. Yeah, Adam.
So I don't, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this because maybe this isn't email to the ombuds, but like, I think this is a great standard as like a baseline. And what you said about like, okay, you need help and something's not going well. I'm thinking of cases where we've, done a lot of work to set things up to start with and it's still not working well.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess like, as you're working to create, yeah, I guess my question. Yeah, it's great. No one's screwed. Okay. So if you've done this over time and you've like, welcomed people into your group and said, here's how we do things, and you've, talked to them, and you're still running up against this with somebody, like, what are the levers that you're thinking of from your point of view of like, what can you do in that state?
I knew somewhere in here I had missed a critical point, which was for Googlers in particular, if we're hitting issues in groups where we're hitting a brick wall, like we are unable to make it better, this is being anti-productive, not constructive, and either we think that it's violating the code of conduct or the code of conduct isn't good enough in that venue, which we would try to go fix in that case. We will encourage Googlers to exit conversations if they're just being abusive. Like, this is one thing that I think we've fallen down on in the past couple of years, where sometimes we will throw our engineers into conversations, not give them the backup, and they don't go well, and we don't provide them that support, and it doesn't get better. And we don't want that for anyone, including people outside too. Again, this is just as much for people who are on the outside as the inside. Jeffrey and I both have a fair amount of experience with codes of conduct and improving conversations. So hopefully we will be able to resolve some things too. We've worked on a couple of these already. It's gone reasonably well. There are some big looming issues that we know about that we're also working on. They're going to take a little longer to fix, because a lot of that is culture, right? And I think what we are looking for is to try to shift the culture of some of these groups to be more positive. Yoav.
Turn it off.
What does exiting conversations mean in practice? I mean, they're engineers, they're trying to ship things. Getting agreement on those things can be in the critical path, or like at least like having a conversation about those things is in the critical path of launching them in Chromium. What does it look like?
So I would hope that this is a last resort and not one we have to get to. I want to start with that so we understand this isn't something we're going to pull out all the time. I would point to what happens today, which is effectively usually we have those conversations inside a standards group. We keep banging our heads on it. We end up shipping without support, but we've also had a bad time, right? And I think that we need to work on ways to get better feedback from others to incorporate that better. And that's part of what this is about, like understanding people's motivations rather than just listening to them say no. I think that's really the biggest place where we can do a better job overall. At the end of the day, it's probably not going to look very different from what we do now, other than we will just say, okay, this is an incubation. I'm sorry we couldn't resolve these concerns better. But that's effectively where we end up today anyways.
Okay.
Anyone else, either in the room or out of the room? Yeah, in the back.
So one of the usual, let me try to gather my words here. So some of this could be acute, where you're kind of thrust into an abusive environment, and some of it kind of slowly builds up, where you are dealing with folks who are, by all respects, polite, intellectually honest, but they're trying, like, the strategy is by exhaustion. If they disagree
Yes.
with you on some philosophical level, instead of directly engaging with that, you just keep not exactly circling, but not exactly making progress either. And it goes on for much longer than folks are. Some kind of alarm going off in the room. Much longer than our engineers, might have patience for, rightfully so, or otherwise. So, is that covered in these standards? What are your thoughts on that? Because there's no particular episode you
Yes.
can point to where it's like they're being abusive.
So I think one of the challenges that we have is to progressively refine how to avoid the concept of stop energy. And again, stop energy is not something you dump into a conversation every time you say, wait a second, I have questions or concerns. It's more when you basically throw up a wall and say, no, this isn't good. And then just kind of walk away. Like, that's a very different character. And you're right in that the latter happens a lot today in standards conversations, or some other version that is just continually exhausting. And we are trying to figure out better guidance for how to resolve that. Generally, the best guidance that I've come up with so far is what I shared in here, which is ask for motivations, ask and make sure that you don't rely on assumptions. Because if you get people down on paper, as it were, about what their motivations are, what they're trying to accomplish, what's acceptable and what isn't, generally you can resolve these one way or another. You at least get to a clear disagreement, and clearer disagreements are easier to deal with than, as you put it, just getting exhausted, because it's continually, not really. So I don't think it's an obvious answer, and this is part of the reason why we're asking to be inserted in some of these conversations, because I think we can get some more guidance because of that. Anybody else? Yeah.
So sometimes in standards conversations, there's a perceived power imbalance between people representing Google and people not representing a
Yes.
large company. And so the strategy of, if a discussion gets contentious, we should feel free to exit the conversation, can be perceived as a bit privileged, because we are in this position of privilege where we can just say we're going to take our ball and go home. And so I wonder if there isn't some need for perseverance, just as through some adversity, just to show that we are well-intentioned and not pulling rank.
Yes. So that's a really excellent observation, and something that I'm glad you brought up, because it helps me underscore one of the points. I think this is probably the first time I've presented this story to a mixed group, like a group of people internal to Google and people outside of Google. And it's not because I want to present a different story. It's more to understand that, of course, we should not be exiting conversations unless it is absolutely necessary. And by absolutely necessary, I mean not exiting conversations leaves our employees in an abusive position. Like, that's not fair. And there are levels of fairness here. At the same time, I do want to be clear, our expectation from Googlers is that you have exemplary behavior. That means you are extra welcoming, extra inclusive, extra respectful of other people. And if you're not, we're going to have to call you on it, because you're absolutely right. Like, as a very large vendor, we have an immense privilege. We have an immense impact on the world, and we have to be very careful about that for that reason. So also, please don't get the idea that I'm giving you the guidance of, hey, if people are mean to you, just walk away all the time. Like, no, get us involved. We'll talk about it. We'll try to resolve it. And that would be the backstop if we absolutely have to, but hopefully we won't get there. Anyone else?
So I'm just wondering if you've thought about there being a role for more of a facilitator for some of these conversations when either things starting getting difficult or contentious, just someone who's maybe not taking sides so much, but kind of trying to uncover motivations and get some of that material down on paper. Maybe some groups it's a chair, maybe some groups it's someone else. I don't know if that's kind of like expanding that role of facilitation a bit more in standards discussions.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the challenges that I have is after having been in the standards game for a really long time, particularly at the W3C, which has its own set of things you can see, I guess, is the importance and difficulty of good chairing to me. And I've chaired a lot of different groups. I currently chair several groups. I've been a good chair and a bad chair, by the way. So like I know the difference, and I am not saying I'm always a good chair. There are some groups that I am. Some groups in the past, I wish I could go back and, well, frankly, just not chair. But I think one of the challenges is making chairing be a supported role and helping provide not only the training, but the, the bandwidth for, I guess, is something that we need to spend a bunch of time thinking of. We've been discussing this in the Positive Work Environment Task Force at the W3C, they've been putting together a bunch of training. But one of the challenges that I have is also if you can find a chair who can be good and objective and isn't so heavily tied to skin in the game, you usually have a lot better time. And sorry, I've tried to find a different phrase to use than skin in the game. But like, as an example, one of the groups that I currently chair is the Immersive Web Working Group and Community Group. I've been doing this for 3 or 4 years at least now. When I started it, it was because I was doing a rotation in the Immersive Web team in Chrome. And we had a great set of engineers and PMs who were participating in the group. So all I had to do was chair. It's like I didn't have to represent a perspective. In fact, I really don't have one in terms of the technology. And it was great because I could resolve these concerns. And we had a couple of knockdown, drag out disagreements in that group between Googlers and other people. And I could be objective about it and not take Google's side because I didn't have to represent it. I think there are a lot of things like that where we're going to have to figure out how to get people to, provide people the support to do that job well and sort of shepherd the conversations and be able to walk away from them when necessary. This is part of the reason behind doing all of this work, is because we're basically saying, if you need somebody objective to just step in and offer some perspective, we're here to do that as the web standards tech leads.
Jeffrey's got a raised hand.
Oh, yeah, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I was going to add.
Hang on one sec while I try again.
I was going to add that and elaborate on that last sentence. Ideally, the chairs are facilitating; they're doing that job. But when they're not, then we can either like step in and try to help, or find someone who can try to help with facilitating between the people who are not agreeing or not discussing very well.
Cool, thanks. All right, I think that's it. Thank you so much.